What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Kirby in Scream 6. Go over her character, go over what I liked, what I didn't like, and also have the general theme, because I've seen this online. I feel like I gotta lean into it a little bit. People seem to be pretty split on Kirby as a character in this film. There's some people that really liked her. There's some people that think she was very underwhelming. So I want to take a look at that. And actually, that's what these videos kind of are in the first place. So it ended up working out that I guess she's a more controversial like character. So, I mean, I'll start out with just saying this. I really liked her. Okay, I'm on that side. I think she did really good. If I were to say a negative, let's get that out of the way, or let's maybe focus on it first. It's the, I guess, lack of like actual good police / FBI work. I think a pretty common theme of her in this movie, I don't think it's a negative thing, is she, well, I mean, from an FBI perspective, she doesn't really do anything. She also doesn't figure anything out. Now, you have the moment with her and Mindy kind of quizzing each other on horror. I personally love that. You know, is it really all that necessary? No, I think it was very much put in as a fan service. I mean, like, that's literally what it was. But it's also, I mean, when, like, you hear that Kirby's coming back in 6, right? When they announce Hayden's returning, the first thing you think of is, can she riff off of somebody that knows horror? And who is that person? It's Mindy. Mindy is the version. I mean, I think Mindy's actually a more version of what Kirby was in 4. Kirby, I don't think, was the same kind of realm in terms of the explanations, but Kirby knows her stuff, right? So I really think that was thrown in there just to say, let's see what would these two talk about if they sat next to each other and they just started going. And that's what that scene was, right? I don't want to think too hard about it. I think if you do think, which is fine, I mean, you think whatever you want on this channel, but I think if you overthink it, at least in my opinion, it would be overthinking it. That would be where the weakness is. I think it was just a fan moment. But I have seen that argument, right? I've seen that criticism of her. And I've seen the criticism of her just not being a good FBI agent. I would say this. I've talked about in past videos, the thing that I maybe don't like, but I leaned into it. I was like, okay, I'll allow this to happen, is the idea that Kirby could be a killer, right? For me, that was absolutely off the table. There was absolutely no way that was going to happen, okay? And I believe that in my soul from, I mean, well, was there ever a minute that I ever thought, I mean, yes, I guess we did talk about Kirby. I think there is an angle of Kirby going down this way where maybe it makes sense. So I do actually think I did maybe a theory video. I think Killjoy Jake did one. And granted, them in their interviews, they did pitch like an okay idea, right? It's been 11 plus years. She got stabbed. She almost died. Actually, she says she did die for about 4 minutes, right? So a lot can happen. And in fact, I was saying, we really don't know a lot about her character. We don't know too much about her personality. We don't know what her life ambitions are. Like, what were they in the first place? And then when you almost die, what does that change? So I do think there were grounds that, yeah, maybe. I guess the way that I always took it is just, you don't do it. You don't have a survivor of a movie, Randy, Kirby, any of it. You don't have them be a killer. It's just not what you do. In fact, and we've said this before, Ghostface like kind of taunts Gale with that very idea that, Sydney never made any sense. Dewey was a fan favorite. You, though, you would have made a good killer. But they are basically saying the quiet part out loud in that scene, right? Survivors are not killers. I mean, I fully believe that before the movie started. And then with the Gale call where they kind of say that, it's like, okay, well, it can't be Kirby. So what I'm going for here, and if you watched my review and other things I've talked about this, I was giving the movie. I was saying, okay, I'll follow you through. When Detective Bailey calls and says, hey, Kirby was fired 2 months ago, like she's off her rocker, I said, I don't believe you. You're Ghostface. I've thought you were Ghostface for, at least a few weeks now, but I'm going to go along with it because I want it to be a surprise. It wasn't the same as like the Richie Amber thing where I knew it was them and I just really didn't want it to be, right? Like going into the movie, I was like, please give me any other character. It wasn't exactly that because I didn't know for sure. I didn't look at the leaks. I didn't know Bailey, Ethan, Quinn. I didn't know any of that. But I had a very good hunch. I just felt Ethan for sure. Bailey, I was pretty confident. And then once you see the movie, it's like, okay, it's obviously Bailey. So when he calls them and he talks about Kirby, it's like, I'll give it to you because I kind of almost want it to be Kirby. I want them to do something so off the deep end that it may not work, but I want to see you try it. And, why am I bringing all this up? Well, that's a huge part of her character, honestly. I mean, there's all the scenes she's in, and Hayden does a great job. And we'll talk about some of the great scenes in a second. But then there's the theme of her character, right? There's the FBI angle, there's the Bailey angle, and there's her, is she not Ghostface. That's a huge part of her character. So I think to not talk about that would be a kind of disservice, because they want that to be a theme in this movie, that you don't really know if you can trust her. I think that was maybe their biggest mistake. You know what I mean? I think if you really think about it, she was also a pretty bad FBI agent. She couldn't figure anything out. Did nobody look into Detective Bailey, like, whatsoever? Like, you know, I think if you look into that too much, but I actually don't think it's too much. I think if you just think about it a little bit, you'll realize that Kirby is not really a good FBI agent whatsoever. In fact, Gale kind of, mocks her for that kind of stuff. So maybe they know. Maybe they know Kirby's not good. I would say the more broad issue that is in your face is that they want you to believe, at the very least, that she could be Ghostface, and I never gave them that. And I do not believe that's my fault. I think that's a theme of 6 movies now, and ultimately we were right, because Kirby's not Ghostface, and she actually saves the day in a sense. We'll talk about that in a second. No survivor is Ghostface. It still is that way. So, you can try all you want to kind of fool me, but you're not going to do it. You're not going to fool a diehard Scream fan. Okay. Those were really the negatives. And I mean, yes, there are an okay amount of them. Some of them can get more detailed than others. Let's talk about the positives. I think her spunk, I think her personality, I think her presence on screen was extremely good. And we talked about the time on screen for some of these characters, and I think Kirby clocks in right around like 9 or so minutes. To be honest with you, it felt like she was in the movie longer. I was worried going in, right? We heard the idea that Kirby would have a limited presence or a limited role, one of those two. Limited was definitely that first word, though. We heard that she would have that in this movie. So going in, I was pretty worried. I was, because it's like, okay, you're going to give her like a 5-minute thing and like that's it. Like, you have to space this stuff out. How much is she going to be in it? I feel like she did a lot with the little time. And it's actually odd. I truly mean this. It's odd for me to even say that, because it never felt like, now maybe if I watch it like another 4, 5, 6 times, I'll just watch it over and over again. Maybe I'll notice, oh, she's really not in it all that much. But I thought every time she was in it, she was doing something. Her person, again, her kind of presence was so strong. I loved it. I loved every scene. And I think the pacing was really good. So it always kind of felt like she was there, right? She was part of it. Now, it takes a while, I guess, for her to get into it, right? It takes probably, 20, 25, 30 minutes before she shows up. Maybe that's wrong, but that's kind of a loose estimate. So it takes a while. But then once she gets in, I mean, the Gale scene is actually, like the phone call, very long. And I mean, that gets you away from Kirby. But then she kind of comes back, after the train stuff, and she comes back, and she's a big part of the ending. Now, I want to talk about that because I think she made a really good impact before the ending. I think if she wasn't even part of the ending, she would still be a good character. I believe that. I think she'd be a good character in this film, even if she was not part of the third act. Because she is part of the third act, I actually want to give her more. Because, okay, now again, this is where the angle that they want to sell you. They want to really make you believe it's her. And so that kind of falls apart, for me. But the flip side of that is she plays a huge part of the ending. They think it's her. Specifically, Sam thinks it's her because of Bailey, right? And she kind of just tells everybody else. And then she plays a huge role in, really, she's the one that stops things from happening. So the 2 ghost faces and Sam and Tara back to back, amazing scene. I could watch that scene over and over again. Who knows what would happen? I assume not much, because then Bailey has to come in, which, by the way, it's like, how did he expect that whole thing to play out? Because if Kirby didn't interrupt the ghost faces, I'm getting ahead of myself or away from myself, but Kirby interrupts that, right? You don't know how that scene plays out without Kirby. She stops that. You still have that kind of disbelief, or just not a great belief in her from Sam, and then Bailey shows up, and I love that scene. We've talked a lot about the scene in my past videos. Bailey walks up with the gun, and it's this kind of standoff thing with Ghostface coming back, from behind him, coming to stab him. And, in so many movies, whether they're action movies or whodunit or horror things or whatever, when you have these kind of standoffs and then they say, hey, oh, behind you, let's try to shoot the person behind you. Normally it's either Kirby shoots Ghostface in that situation, or Bailey turns around and kind of dies, right? Gets stabbed, because there's a distrust amongst them, and then all of a sudden Ghostface kills one of them. So that's how you expect it to play out, and obviously Bailey is Ghostface. So I love it. But even beyond that, Kirby is the one that really interrupts their monologue. Now, it's really all 3 of them, right? Kirby does a little bit, Sam does a little bit, Tara smacks Quinn with a brick, all that stuff. She gets stabbed again. She does the final blow to Ethan, dropping the TV. I'll go to my grave. I love the line. I saw it in a scary movie once with dropping the TV. Love it. I don't know if that would have been her line if Sydney is in the movie, do you give Sydney that role? Do you give Sydney that line just in general? I don't know, but I'm not going to take it away from Kirby because she said it, and Hayden did a great job. I believe that. Also, you have to remember, this is a person that hasn't acted in a long time. This is a person that kind of semi-retired. She went through a lot of things in her personal life, not to really go through the weeds of that stuff, but she's had a lot of issues, and she came back, and I think she did phenomenal. I think she stepped right back in. It's a different form of Kirby. I really kind of want to watch 4 and then 6 because I do think this is a different form, but I'll give it to him actually fully because, again, after 11, 12 years, she could have changed. It's pretty obvious you would change. And not only would you change from 10, 11, 12 years just by yourself, but what if you died? What if you got stabbed and you kind of died, but you kind of didn't? How would that change you? Well, it would change you quite a bit. Even in your maybe base personality, she's not exactly the same, and I think that's okay. Again, I think the biggest weaknesses is just they try to make her look kind of sketchy in some scenes, and because they want to sell you that maybe she's Ghostface. But then, when the movie ends, and this is kind of what I did, when the movie ends and you know for sure she's not Ghostface, you say, when Kirby gets that call and she walks away, and it's all very eerie, maybe she's scheming something, and then Bailey says, hey, dig up what we know on Kirby. What was that all about, right? You think about that scene and you say, why was she acting so weird? Who was that on the phone, right? What was going on there? You see her right before the final act when she walks away, when she looks to a direction, right, from that kill box. She looks to a direction and she kind of slips away. What are you doing? Why are you acting so suspicious? Did you see someone, right? It's I guess we'll never know the answer, but in their quest to make her look guilty, I mean, they kind of did. They made it weird where it's well, okay, she wasn't guilty. She had a reason, I suppose, for doing all those things. So what was the reason? Why were you acting so weird? And I guess that's kind of, one thing I'd bring up. One final thing I want to say, I think Ryan Showers had talked about this, friend of the channel, right? We've talked to him a couple times. I want to bring this up, the trust issues maybe you could explore with Kirby in the future, because one thing that's really interesting is she's been burned so many times, right? She was best friends with Jill. Charlie was an on and off, she liked him. She was waiting for him to kind of make a move. So they were both Ghostface. And then she was partners for the majority of this movie with Detective Bailey. So kind of what's up with that? I like that. I like that a lot where she's picked you think of Sydney or even you think of Sam, they put themselves maybe around some questionable people, some people that ultimately want to kill them. You can't suss out Ethan. You can't suss out Quinn. Well, what about Kirby? Kirby was super close to at least Jill. To Detective Bailey, she was right around. So is that something you can explore in the future? Kirby's pretty important. That's another, I think, thing to throw in there to say it's not just Sam and Tara that are these survivors. It's not just Sydney or even Gale that are these survivors. It's Kirby as well. And Kirby's a part of this universe. She's a part of these other characters' lives. And she also tends to put herself around very suspect people that end up kind of biting her. So I want to just kind of throw that out there because I thought, Ryan had come up with that. I think that's a really good idea. So let me know what you guys think in the comments about Kirby. She's in my top, she's in the upper elite level, let's say, of my character rankings. I really liked her, but I definitely want to hear from you all. Make sure you're all subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next Scream video.